what the Bible says. So after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. So God makes a promise, and God demonstrates His power in our lives to fulfill His promise. He keeps His word. But there is a time for both, and there is also a transitional time of waiting, and that's the most difficult phase for all of us. It's a time of waiting. It's a very, very difficult phase. It's a time where you have to hold on to your faith in God. Now, I want to read one more verse. In the previous verse, there is a connection to this whole passage which the author is writing. And in chapter 6, we just read verse 13, and I want you to read verse 12. It says, "We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what was promised to them." So what is he saying? We do not want you to be lazy. And then it says that you imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what was promised to them. And the next verse says, God promised Abraham that He will bless him. And so waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. So what is waiting patiently means? It's not being lazy. That because God has said something, I'm just going to sit back and just wait endlessly. It's not a passive waiting. It's not being laid back. It's not being lax. And God's saying, let's not be lazy. What God is saying is that you see how these men and women had the faith to believe constantly that God is working. In the time of waiting, they constantly believed that God is working, and their faith was active in God. Most of the times people lose and become disillusionists during this time of waiting. It's very hard. It's a phase where you tend to lose out on God. You tend to lose your faith in God. You tend to have a lot of questions. You feel like it's going on forever and forever. And that's when we kind of become lazy. You know what the word lazy means? It's saying you become laid back and you're just hopelessly, against hope, thinking that something would happen, where your faith has become passive. So what the Bible tells us is that when you're waiting on God, when God has promised something, and we know that, in His character, God is faithful to keep His promise. And when you know that God has a specific time to fulfill His promise, to reveal His power, to fulfill His promise, we go through a time of waiting.